Hello, good evening, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where in the world you are signing in from today. My name is Scott Sinclair. I'm the Senior Manager of Programs here at Cancer and Careers, and I want to welcome all of you to tonight's webinar. For those of you who are listening in on your phone, if you could please send us an email to cancerandcareers@cew.org with your name and the number that you're dialing in from. That way we can confirm your attendance and make sure you get all of the relevant follow-up information after today's webinar. Now, if you are new to Cancer and Careers, first of all, welcome. We are glad to have you here. We are a national nonprofit and the only program of its kind solely dedicated to empowering and educating people with cancer to thrive in their work environment. This is a list on this slide of all of our free programs and services that we offer. Our comprehensive website is available in both English and Spanish and is the heart of everything that we do here. On there, you can find various support services, including our resume review service or access to career coaches. Our educational blog and news feed are both rich resources where those who've been diagnosed, their caregivers, employers, healthcare professionals can all stay current on topics related to work and cancer. And our free publication library is available in both English and Spanish, which provides tangible, easy to digest information on working and looking for work after a cancer diagnosis. And those are all available in both hard copy and PDF formats. We also offer various events every year, from hour-long webinars like this one you're about to see. And I'll be back after Julie talks this evening, to tell you a little bit more about what we have coming up. Now, for those of you who are seeking continuing education credits, this slide lists all of the organizations who have accredited today's webinar, as well as the required steps for getting a certificate. This information is also available on our website, and a link to the evaluation and the post-test will be shared at the conclusion of today's webinar. So please take the time to complete those at that point. However, if you're not able to complete them today, that is fine. You're going to receive an email tomorrow, no later than 5 p.m. Eastern, which will have the links and all of the information again that you'll need. For those of you who are not requesting continuing education credits, we would actually really love to hear from you as well. You don't need to do the post-test, but we'd love for you to fill out an evaluation. This lets us know what's working, what's not working, so that we can serve all of you our best. And it also helps us show our value of the programs to our funders so that they can continue to invest in these programs and make them all free of charge for you. Also, for those of you planning to request continuing education credits, our accrediting bodies require us to share this slide and to let you know that there are no conflicts of interest to report. Now, as you might know, Zoom has a lot of great features which you can use to interact with the event today, with us, or with other attendees. You'll notice a chat box in your features panel. Feel free to use this chat box to communicate with us on the back end, other attendees. However, it's one thing that is important to note is that the chat box is not going to be private, and it will show your first and last name. So just be mindful of that if that is something that you want to engage with. You'll also see a Q&A box. I will be back at the end of Julie's presentation to help go through some questions. If you have a question at any point during the presentation, feel free to drop it in that Q&A box. And we know the importance of privacy, so there is an option to submit those questions anonymously if you choose to do so. We'll try our best to get to everyone's questions, but if we don't have time for yours, please shoot us an email at cancerandcareers@cew.org, and we'll make sure that we get you a response as soon as we can. Now, thanks in part to Genentech and P&G Beauty, Cancer and Careers is proud to offer this 11th year of the Balancing Work and Cancer webinar series, which was created to provide anyone whose life has been touched by cancer with concise, targeted information about work-related issues that arise after a cancer diagnosis. Additionally, we would like to recognize all of Cancer and Careers' year-round sponsors who support all of our core program and allow us to continue providing all of our resources and services free of charge. Now, for most people, workplace stress is a given, And when you add cancer into the mix, it can become debilitating. But we are here to help you think about your priorities and how you can balance your job, your family, and your own well-being to avoid letting that stress get the best of you. Now, leading today's webinar is Julie Larsen, a longtime collaborator with CAC. Julie's a licensed social worker with her own private practice. Prior to that, she was the Youth Adult Program Director at Cancer Care and continues to work closely with the adolescent and young adult cancer community. She's nationally recognized, renowned speaker in the AYA cancer space and has been featured in numerous publications, including Self Magazine, Coping with Cancer, Cure Magazine, and it is just my pleasure to welcome Julie.
Thank you so much, Scott. It is always my pleasure and honor to work with Cancer in Careers, one of my most referred to organizations whenever anybody is dealing with a question around employment and work. I just find you're such a valuable resource. So thank you for trusting me with being part of your webinar series. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Wednesday evening or this Wednesday time together. I am glad we are here. I hope that over this next 45 minutes to an hour, I am able to just meet you wherever you are as a cancer survivor, someone who is also potentially working at the same time as going through treatment, or perhaps you're somebody that's post-treatment and still navigating work-related stress related to cancer as well. So let's get going. I do, as a presenter, keep my eyes on that chat. So if you are someone that finds something resonates for you or you want to pop something in the chat and it feels comfortable for you to do so publicly, I will watch that. As Scott said, certainly if there are specific questions, you can put that in the Q&A and I will work hard to leave a little extra time at the end so that we can do that together. All right, let's begin. I think. There we go. A diagnosis, let me see if I already skipped through one. No. Okay. So a diagnosis of cancer can be information overload. I want you to just kind of initially think back to that first moment of sitting with the doctor or the medical team and hearing those words, you have cancer. And immediately survivors are thrown into a place of struggling to get enough information to understand about their diagnosis, about what's going to be working with them, about their commitment to work, disclosure decisions. Who do I tell? When do I tell specific people? Why would I tell people? Along with the weight of the fear of the future, not knowing quite what to expect and to understand what will come down the road, whether that's related to the treatments and how they will affect me, but also how am I going to be after all of this? How will this change me? And the questions about the impact of treatment. How is it going to change my energy level, my focus, my concentration, my ability to continue to maintain the responsibilities and the priorities of those that I'm working with? And I don't know within this call if I am only speaking to survivors, if I am also speaking to healthcare professionals, but also perhaps even some caregivers. And if that's the case, certainly a diagnosis of somebody that you love impacts your capacity to work and balance all of this as well. So I am glad that any caregivers who might be with us today, you're here too. A little bit of a roadmap for where we're going to go. When we think about managing stress in the workplace, or frankly, managing stress, period, we've got to begin to cultivate the skills of noticing, noticing our stress and noticing not only how it shows up, but what are we needing in the midst of it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what do I mean by noticing your stress, because we don't know what to do with it until we notice it. Then getting a little deeper, understanding what's helpful or not helpful, right? That's also a part of noticing what's working for me, what's not working for me. And then we're going to dive into some strategies. So what can I do with this distress, with whether that distress is in the form of overwhelm, whether it's in the form of isolation and kind of loneliness, whether it's in the form of irritation and, frustration with things. What do I do? How do I care for myself? And then, because we don't live in this in just a silo, how do I communicate what I need from others? What do I need to kind of say? What boundaries might I need to put down? How do I ask for help in a way that still holds me in a space where people can see me as capable and functioning and with quite a lot of strength, but also having some needs at the same time? So we're going to talk about all of those things. That's where we're headed. Just so that we're all on the same page. Stress 101. What do I mean when I say the word stress or de-stress? Stress is, bottom line, your body's way of responding to a demand. Okay. Our body has a physical, an emotional, and a mental response to stress. And I want you to hold those three things in your head right now. We're going to touch on it again later, but that's how we're going to kind of structure thinking about stress: a physical, emotional, a mental response. In truth, there are different types of stress, right? So not all stress is inherently quote unquote bad. We need some degree of stress in order to grow, in order to kind of perform sometimes. Stress is often what makes us sit up on the edge of our seat, focus, and get like serious about something. So if you've ever been, on a first date or completed an endurance event or gone on an interview or had to have a hard conversation, you've met stress and it may have worked for you. So I don't want to just completely vilify stress. So for that purpose, sometimes I use the word distress, right? The distress is when things are feeling uncomfortable and unsettling. The other tricky thing about stress and why we just can't deliver a manual to everybody when they're diagnosed with cancer is that it's subjective. What totally stresses you out and makes you feel kind of unsettled and fearful and worried may be very different from somebody else in a support group that you attend, or your spouse, or even your colleagues around you. So that can often lead to difficulties within relationships because we don't fully understand each other completely. And I think it's an important thing to kind of hold on to is what this is how I feel. And you have every right to feel what you feel. And yeah, others may not fully understand you or get it. And perhaps as I say that, that's resonating for some of you. Noticing. Okay, so I said we need to begin to kind of think about how do we notice our distress. I say this in all the webinars that I do. I'm sure that Scott or those at Cancer Career that are here with me are like, yep, I know that I know this is the foundation. I want all of you to leave this and walk away from this moment with, if nothing else, the charge to develop a habit of checking in with yourself. Cultivate this skill or this practice of noticing yourself. How am I doing? Right? Like just whether, and sometimes when I'm working with people who are at work or through their day, maybe that's a top of the hour check-in. Like, how am I doing? Maybe it's a moment at the beginning of the day, your feet first hit the ground. How am I doing today? And can you begin to broaden your feeling word vocabulary? Can I name the feeling that I'm having? Even if I'm feeling fine, I'm feeling I'm feeling calm. I'm feeling connected. I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling ready for the day ahead. I'm feeling eager to go. Or I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling dread. I'm feeling irritable. I'm feeling impatient. I'm feeling lonely. Can you begin to broaden that feeling word vocabulary? Why is that important? A couple of reasons, but one of them is that the more specific you are with what you're feeling in any given moment, then it kind of lays the groundwork for what are we going to do with that, right? Because we're going to do something very different with I am feeling overwhelmed or I'm feeling a great degree of like dread than we're going to do with irritability or frustration, right? So that helps us to begin to get very specific about how we're going to take care of ourselves. There's other reasons why I think naming it are important, and I'm going to talk about those later, so I'll circle back to that. But also begin to cultivate this habit of noticing where is this showing up? If I'm not noticing my feeling, where is it showing up in my body? Because you might be zipping through your day at times, especially if you're at work and you're busy, and you may not notice that you're having an emotional feeling, but you do begin to slowly notice that you're tense in your muscles and your shoulders, or there's a gnawing sense in your stomach, or you feel an overwhelming sense of fatigue that isn't necessarily related to energy. So that's another way that you might feel stress is in your body. How does your stress show up in your body? And some people are much more attuned to that. And then in this exact moment, what are you doing that's helpful? What are you doing that's not working so well for you? Keep that in your mind. Remember that, okay? Because we're going to talk about that later, but that might be the concrete task that is happening right in front of you right now. I find that I'm stressed or I'm overwhelmed or I'm kind of just like zoning out, disassociating a little bit. I'm numb. I'm also just like lost in my scroll of social media. That's not helping me. Or I find that I am kind of mindlessly taking trips to the fridge or to going to get, this, and that's not helping me. But this getting outside, that's helping me. That's contributing to my sense of like calm and perspective. So begin to notice what's paired with how you're doing. Okay, let's keep moving. Noticing, name it to tame it. So one of the reasons, and I said this, there will be other reasons why I think broadening your feeling word vocabulary is key, is that realistically, some of the unsettledness that comes with a cancer diagnosis may not completely go away, right? And I think sometimes people walk into my office as a therapist, or they begin to do things with the goal of getting rid of this unsettledness, getting rid of the worry, the nag of what if, what if. And I think that if we can begin to say, there it is, there's my unsettled, there's my uncertainty, there's my fear, it showed up, it's here, it begins to give you a little distance from that feeling and just that you're not the feeling, you're having the feeling. And in that space, we can make a choice for what we're going to do with our exact right now, how we're going to respond to it, not react to it, but what are we going to do that would be helpful? And it also, as we begin to notice those feelings and allow them to linger or exist a little bit in the background, it over time builds our tolerance for that feeling. I know you may not love that sound, building tolerance for the unsettledness, but we're going to want to build some degree of tolerance for that because there may be something that's just realistic about it and gives us some flexibility with our attention, that I can get really good with working with all this noise in the background, right? It's more familiar to me. I'm accustomed, I know what that is. I know how it feels. There might be days when it's louder and I've got to lower my expectations or I've got to make some shifts, but just noticing instead of trying to fight it or getting rid of it, just noticing there it is. And this is what I need to do right now. I think also noticing and naming and naming to tame it is recognizing that instead of always working to kind of analyze and understand it, sometimes we just need to quiet and calm our body. And that when we quiet, we take a minute to kind of acknowledge that and get calm, that not only feels better, but it opens up our mind and it helps us to kind of act smarter. So something to think about as we first begin, how we notice. Feelings are data. So sometimes if we're not noticing those feelings, if we're not naming it, sometimes they're driving the bus, right? That urgency or that pressure or the anxiety and the fear, they're kind of just driving us instead of us driving. And yet, at the same time, feelings, I often say, are signposting to you that you need something. So if we're ignoring it, if we're trying to kind of white knuckle through it or fight it, then we're maybe not gathering all of the information we need for how best to care for ourselves. So maybe another homework, and now that I'm saying homework, and I've said it a couple times, maybe you grab a piece of paper and a pen, right? One of the first things I charged you with is begin to cultivate this habit of noticing yourself and recognizing. Now I'm going to say to you, okay, I think a lot of the times unsettled feelings are when we don't feel great, are signposting an unmet need. What are you needing? Right? So there could be a feeling of loneliness and sadness, and we're needing connection and we're needing support, right? They're needing other people to kind of swoop in and comfort us, right? Comfort, support, connection. There could be a feeling of irritation and frustration, and we're needing stillness, or we're needing clarity, or we're needing consideration and respect potentially. There could be a feeling of overwhelm and dread. And in that, we might need we might need ease. We might need calm, stillness, autonomy with our time, right? So But how do you begin to, and I ask that to my clients a lot. What do you think would be helpful? What are you needing? And that begins to get them thinking about, in this moment that doesn't feel great, what would make it better? What do I need? And not just a strategy, but an overarching need. Your anxiety, if you're having anxieties of what if, they might be signposting questions. And maybe some of those questions we cannot get answers to because we can't get answers to everything, but maybe some of them we could. Maybe that anxiety is important to look eye to eye or look at face to face because it may direct the conversations that you need to have with your medical team, or direct the conversations about what's expected of you and what are the possibilities for accommodations at work, right? I want these things. So, how do I begin to formulate that? Think about that anxiety. What do I not want people to see? What do I not want people to think about me as I return to work? What do I want people to think? And how do I begin to use some of that anxiety around disclosing in the workplace or not disclosing, but needing some degree of accommodations? How do I distill that down and be able to advocate for myself or ask for information so that I can still get my needs met? Your body brings you home. So in the midst, let's say you're headed into a work and you're having to have a hard conversation and you feel a little bit nervous about it. How do you get centered and quiet in your body? Remember to kind of, what is the purpose? Where am I headed? What do I need? How do I articulate that? On the other side, if you're in a relationship and we're having a communication, and we're going to get to this later, what does the other side need? How do I keep that in mind too? And stay quiet and calm in my body. If my body is calm, my mind is calmer too. So holding on to your body brings you home. It helps you find calm. It helps you find presence. And in moments of upset, something that doesn't work at work, something that is very difficult, how can I be helpful? A question to yourself. How can I be helpful? Again, like, what is my need in this? What are the questions I have? How can I be helpful? Just ways to begin to think about that for yourself as before maybe you communicate with others or as you walk into a day or a moment. So I just said answers may illuminate questions. I think underneath a lot of our worry is an unanswered question. How do you gather the information? And then this goes to, if you're newly diagnosed or if you're shifting treatment plans or things are changing for you with regard to kind of your capacity at work or what is possible or not possible, how do you first gather all the information that you need, including how your body responds or what the doctors tell you? And that way, that kind of helps you turn to other people at work to ask for your needs or to explore what your options are. I know that people sometimes hesitate to ask for those things. They don't want to come across as a burden. They don't want to ask too much of work before they may really need it. But how do you kind of frame it in a way of, this is the way I could be the best employee for you? So, in recognition of what's going on for me, I want to be really thoughtful to take care of myself or that you get my best me. So, I work very well in the morning, I'm noticing. And so, if I could work in these times and accommodate and flex my hours in these ways, or if I could bring in these other people to help work with this, that would be helpful and that would allow me to take on it something more, right? So, how do you begin to problem solve and think about that with your needs and your information about your best self, even during treatment or even going through it? Like, how do you present that to your team? I was just talking to a client this morning, and she's actually a caregiver, but she's a long distance caregiver and really struggling with a sense of guilt that she wants to be with her loved one, right? But that's requiring a lot of flexibility and a lot of understanding from her workplace in order for her to do that. And they have been incredibly accommodating to her and very open to her working long distance, right? And working remotely from when she travels to go visit her loved one. But she said to me this morning, I feel guilt. I don't want to take advantage of the goodwill of my workplace. They've been great, because I want to reserve that there might come a time when I really need them to be supportive of me. So I'm constantly balancing how much I ask and what they're willing to do for when the times when I'm really going to need it. And so I think that, and I asked her, how do you know? How do you know? And she said, I just am paying attention to this seems stable here at home. I'm going to go back to work. Everything at work feels stable. I'm going to go back to here. So it's kind of always checking in. That's that process of checking in and noticing. Um, and then we also talked about how you use that guilt, how you use that feeling to focus, right? Like if she's feeling like the problem is that I'm not present some of the time, then that's the worry. The worry is that she's not present all the time or in the ways that she historically has been. So instead of having that feeling of guilt and judging it and getting self-critical and letting that kind of overwhelm and get her spinning about like how, how things are going or how people are perceiving her in the workplace, she can really use that when I am there, they get 100% of me. And when I leave, I'm able to take that boundary because I've given that. So, how do you use those feelings to direct you, not to take you down, but to kind of direct you? That it helps me remember that when I am there, I want to give everything because they're being so accommodating on the times I'm not. So, and I think that could work for survivors too, that when you're there, I do this, but I need to take some accommodations and allowing for that flexibility. Meet with other survivors. So when you think about educating yourself, that might come from publications and amazing resources like Cancer and Careers. It might also come from peers. Are there other cancer survivors that you connect with who are in a similar place? Not just going through treatment, but maybe working through treatment. And how are they doing and what's working for them? And maybe some tips and strategies that they're finding or some ways that they've articulated their needs that really work for you. And I think that that's the great value in connecting with other peers. And then finally, educate yourself on your rights. So people might feel like they can't, or that something would get something would play out and not in their favor if they ask for certain things. You have some rights and entitlements that are important to know. And Cancer and Careers does an excellent job of kind of outlining a lot of those things on their website or in other webinars that they might have that will help you understand what you're entitled to too. Those things are important for you to know too, that you're protected in some ways. Okay, moving on. Come on. There we go. I'll in the form of understanding, I'm going to kind of flip through this slide a little quickly, but I think it's important as you think about caring for yourself in any setting, but particularly in work too. Do you know what your triggers are? You might be sailing along and feeling like you're doing well and you've got your feet on the ground and you're ready to focus and get to work. And then boom, something hits and it just kind of leaves you kind of with a unsettled and with a fog and hard to focus and hard to, what are the things that trigger you? Maybe it's certain people, maybe it's certain dates or times of year, maybe it's certain topics of conversation. It's important to kind of know what those things are because you can kind of safeguard and protect yourself along the way. And I say this a lot with regard to triggers. Unfortunately, sometimes people don't know what a trigger is until you've been triggered, but then bank it. No, gosh, when those commercials come on TV about cancer drugs or side treatment, that just throws me. It takes me back. It just makes it all come back glaring in my face. Or I didn't even notice it, but these gray, cold days remind me of when I was experiencing those symptoms that took me to the doctor that led to my diagnosis. And to be in this time of year feels heavier. I'm noticing that in the weeks and then in the days leading up to a test or a medical appointment, I just have a harder time focusing. Okay, so when you notice that you're in a trigger, we've got to care for yourself you've got to care for yourself in a bit of a different way. So in an effort to better understand yourself, where does your stress show up? When you experience it, also begin to keep log of what your triggers are so that these are unique to you and so that you know how to take care of yourself. Understanding. This is still in the land of understanding. Self-care is constantly a balance. I think I've already said that within this hour together. It's constantly a balance. There is no manual. And that balance is a mix of things. So that balance could be, and this is where you have to kind of really tune into yourself when we're feeling distressed, and maybe you're in the workplace. Sometimes we have an instinct to better understand it. What am I thinking? And I already just said that. What am I thinking? What are my questions? Why did I get here? What was my trigger? What do I need? All of that. And that's all thinking. That's very cognitive, right? Sometimes we need to balance that with, I can't think this right now. I can't over process this right now. right now I just need to find some calm. So that balance between insight, that insight driven kind of spin of like, let's kind of dive into this, and the balance of, I just right now need to resist overthinking this or processing it. And I just need to get quiet and still in my body. Right. So you have to know where you are. And maybe when I get quiet and still in my body, then I can think about it in different ways. Self-care, second block on my scale here. Self-care might also be that balance between I am not feeling my best today. I woke up, I feel dread. I've said the word dread. I feel overwhelmed. I just am not my best today. So, is this a moment where I need to plug in some self-compassion and lower my expectations, move a little slower through my day, ask for support and bring some other people in to kind of walk along with me because it's not a great, this is not an easy day today. So I need to kind of navigate that in a different way or take the day and relax and cut myself a break versus balance there of discipline. You know what? I need to get in the shower. I need to get ready. I need to get outside. I need to take a walk. I need to pick up the phone and make this call. I need to get moving. So only you can really know that. But my point is that self-care isn't all soft and gentle. Sometimes self-care is discipline and get moving and do the hard thing. And yet at the same time, it's not always, you could also say that that's, you know, white knuckling and ignoring and whatever. It's not all that either because self-care also requires gentleness and self-compassion. It's a balance. So you've got to begin to tune in to where you are and what you need in a day. And you know what? I've had a lot of days where I've just kind of let go and I've just kind of, given myself kind of a break. And I got to swing the pendulum over here, or I am going and going and going and avoid, and I need to just call it and I need to stop and I need to slow down. There's another balance. And then the other balance that I always say, and there's many ways that self-care is a balance. And I see your note in there in the chat, Sayla, about this slide. And I am so glad that it's resonating for you and hopefully others. Because you can think about self-care as a balance on a million different things, a million different kind of areas. But the other one I want to highlight on this slide is that we all need to have the skill and the capacity to both tune in and reach out. And what I mean by that is there are some people in my office who are amazing at cultivating support and reaching to other people and bringing in the people that love them and care for them and support them and comfort them and talk things through and sit by their side. Those individuals also need to have the capacity to individually and quietly care for themselves all by themselves, right? We need both. I have other people in my office who struggle with reaching out and they retreat and they care for themselves and they need to build that capacity of asking for support and reaching out. So we need to be able to do both because there is a 2 a.m. in the moment 2 a.m. in the morning moment, right? Yeah, I don't know if many of you agree with me, but I've sat with enough survivors in my life to know that there are many middle of the night moments where you've got to have some muscles to be able to comfort and self-soothe. And at the same time, isolation is a risk factor for anxiety and depression. So we also need to cultivate that habit of bringing others in. So again, a balance, and you are in control of that balance, where you need and how you take care of yourself. Goes back to understanding and noticing. Okay, toolbox. So now let's get to some strategies. Let's think about this. And I want you to think about this both maybe just in your life, like day to day to day, in your home, and you're with your family and your friend groups, but also certainly because we're here at Cancer and Careers, how you're doing that in your job, right? What's feasible, what's capable. I told you that stress shows up in your emotions and in your thoughts and in your body. And I therefore think of strategies for self-care as, you have 3 entrance ramps for taking care of yourself. You've got your body, you've got your thinking, and you've got your emotions. So I'm going to kind of divide out these strategies. What is really focused on your body, your thoughts and your feelings. And you are going to, again, make judgment calls. You are the boss of you. You are going to make judgment calls around how best what tool can I use to take care of myself right now in this moment that doesn't feel easy. Okay, this is a body one. Okay, so what are some concrete strategies or skills that quiet and calm our body? And if there are others and you feel comfortable and you want to add to the chat, feel free. We can all read that. We can all join together. But your five senses, bottom line, five senses are part of your body and they always exist in the present. So much of our distress is when our mind gets really future oriented or perhaps is rehashing something that's uncomfortable from our past. And so sometimes to bring ourselves back to our present, back to our right here and now, we need to get connected to our body. So your five senses. Does anybody know the skill 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? But 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is a way to kind of come home. Name five things that you see, four things that you hear, three things that you feel, not emotionally, you feel physically. Like I can feel the temperature of this room on my skin. I can feel the chair that I'm sitting on. I can feel my feet on the ground. I love that people know this already. I'm seeing that in the chat. Yes, use it for anxiety, because again, anxiety is when your thinking is taking you on a trip, right? It's taking you down a train of terribles, and we need to come back to right now, in this exact now where you're safe and you're okay, right? So come on home. And I think 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 often sometimes is a way that I know some of my clients use it to sleep. Like they're struggling to sleep, their mind is going, their mind is taking journeys all over the place. Come home, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 can help. I'm going to see, hear, feel. What you'll notice when you do it is that it requires increasing amounts of attention. So it's not pretty easy to say five things that you see, right? I see the lamp, I see the cup, I see, my phone on the desk, I see a notepad on the desk, I see a pencil. Four things I hear. I hear the fan in my room. I hear someone in the hall. Then when you begin to do body and whatever, it slowly gets more, you have to pay more and more attention. And what's happening is that you're redirecting your attention from that nightmare and that train of terribles to your right now. Okay. That's a strategy. Another, I'm going to skip on down to bullet number 4. Give yourself permission to delegate your worry or delegate certain things that are consuming your thoughts to your future self. You know what? That is not something I have any control over right now. I am going to trust my future self to manage that doctor's appointment next Tuesday. I am thinking about it a lot. I am worried about it. And I have every reason to feel that way. Never judge your feelings. I have every reason to feel that way. These tests and these upcoming things are anxiety provoking, but I'm going to trust that my Tuesday self is going to pay close attention, is going to have answers and questions for my medical team. It's going to go through that list that I keep making when I come up with those questions. My Tuesday self can do it. And so right now, my Wednesday self, there's nothing more I can do. So I'm going to redirect my attention to making dinner, to turning on a television show, to doing something different right now. So you can give yourself permission to delegate out to your future self. That can also work if you're in the middle of your workday and you get triggered and you feel hot emotions and it's all right there. Notice it. You got to notice it. There it is. See it, catch it. And you can say, there it is. This matters a great deal to me. These emotions are coming up at a time that's not convenient. I don't have capacity right now to care for myself. I'm going to note it and I'm going to schedule it out for 5 p.m. or 7 o'clock tonight. And at 7 o'clock tonight, or whenever I've scheduled it out for later, I'm just going to really dive in. I'm going to give myself permission to just cry. I'm going to give myself permission to tell my husband or my partner or somebody on the phone all about what's happened. I'm going to really give myself permission and go there. But right now I'm going to need to breathe, calm, get back to my right now, but I'm not going to ignore this. I'm not going to dismiss it. I'm just going to schedule it out to later. Now, what you might find is that at 5 or 7 p.m., it doesn't have the same weight and it doesn't have the same intensity, but I would still give it attention, right? It mattered to you. So still do that so that you can trust down the road that you will give yourself that attention later. But sometimes that can help in the moment. This matters. I can't do it right now. I'm going to do it later. Um, Grounding techniques are anything that is in the here and now. So eye contact. So sometimes with parents, I tell them, look your children right in the eye, get right to them, right? That is going to ground you in this moment, or that can happen with anybody else. Sometimes we can be so lost in our thoughts that we're talking to people or we're on the phone or we're busy with whatever, and we're still in our thoughts while we're actively doing things, right? We're kind of mindless, right? But when we look at somebody, when we stop, plant our 2 feet on the ground and look at somebody, that brings us home. Okay, eye contact, get your 2 feet on the ground, notice them, hug. First of all, a hug with another person is really powerful. Like if you can get into a hug with somebody else and just stay there, sway, calm, that's actually going to trigger your parasympathetic nervous system. It's going to quiet and calm you down. If you don't have somebody available, it's okay. You can hug yourself, and that does the same thing. And it really does kind of begin to quiet you. When you think of a temper tantrum child, or a child that's emotionally deregulated and is like, what do? We tend to bring them in and we hold them and we help them to calm. You can do the same thing. That's why it quiets your whole nervous system. So think about that. Okay. Those are some ideas. There's some other ones on here that I didn't touch base with, but they're all ways to bring you home, get you quiet and calm in your body. Come on, slides. There we go. Okay, now let's think about some strategies for those nagging thoughts, those thoughts that just go. Okay, I've got 4 options here. Take a picture of the slide, write it down, do whatever you need to do. What do you do with what if, what if, what if, what if? There it is, there it is. Okay, first off, and this is the one that is most common, is how do we challenge those thoughts, right? Oftentimes our worry and our anxiety is a worst case scenario. It is not, it is scary and unsettling, right? And it's also future oriented. It's something that's not right now. So how do you take that what if and change it to what is? Okay, what if my cancer's come back? What if my cancer's progressed? What if I'm not showing any response to this treatment? Okay, valid. Again, I'm not going to judge those feelings. They all make sense to me. They are understandable to have. Right now, I know that my last scan showed this and things are working or things are stable. Right now, I know that I have 2 more treatments, and that is where I need to focus today. I need to get through these 2 treatments. What is right now, I'm also noticing changes in my energy level. Right now, I'm also noticing my hair is growing back. That's a sign of health in my body. I'm noticing. So what is a fact, a concrete fact that you can grab onto? Last scans and treatment results, how your body is feeling right now, right? Okay, I'm feeling stronger. I'm feeling calmer. My hair is growing. I'm feeling strong, different ways. What are you noticing that what is? Okay, that will bring you home. What if versus what else? Okay, so sometimes people have a lot of worry about feeling different. They get very hyper focused and very tuned in to all of the feelings within their body, and those can be triggers, right? Okay, there's an ache and there's a pain in my shoulder. I'm worried about, oh my gosh, what if there's been a change and there's a recurrence or there's metastasis or something right here? I'm feeling an ache and a pain in my shoulder. I'm worried about it, or I'm feeling a headache. What does this mean? I never want to dismiss or minimize somebody's worst case scenario or how they're feeling. But what I say in my office is, can we broaden this? Can there be more possible truths? So, yesterday you were also carrying around that heavy bag, and maybe you're feeling the like stitch in your muscle, or kind of that from carrying around that bag. Did you sleep last night? Could you have slept weird and maybe that's contributing to, you worked in your garden all day yesterday. So now we're feeling it in your lower back, that pain. Could there be what else? What else might be contributing to this? Right? Can we just broaden it? We're not dismissing it, but what other options might there be? What if to then what? I've said this in my office. I've done these other things in my office. I had a client come in my office once and they were like, this is not working for me. I can't, my mind just kind of keeps spinning and doing that worry wheel. And I said, well, then how are you sitting in front of me? How did you make it through this? What did you do? And he was very honest. He said, you know what I did is I went to the worst case scenario, and I kept going to the worst case scenario. And as kind of bizarre and maybe unconventional or counterintuitive as it might seem, Coming up with a concrete plan for the worst case scenario can be very settling. And I've done that with certain people in my office as they anticipate a scan. If we find out news at the scan, you know what they're going to do? They're going to start talking to you about the options and we're going to start figuring out the next plan. And I know that's not what you want, but it's not that you fall off of a cliff and everything stops. We're going to start gathering evidence. We're going to start understanding the next steps. So sometimes it helps to come up with a concrete plan. It feels quieting and settled. And then we got to come on back. And actually, right here, we're here. That hasn't happened. So it also illuminates the difference of that's just my worst case scenario. That's not actually where I'm at. What if to what's left? And I think that what I mean when I say what if to what's left is you are not a cancer diagnosis. You are all many, many things. You are mothers, maybe you are fathers, maybe you are siblings, our children, our parents, our employees, our chefs, our gardeners, our piano players, or who knows, many, many, many things. So this what if could be there and you'd be like, stop. I got to put cancer down for a second. Not that I'm minimizing it or dismissing it, but I have got to turn my attention to another corner of my identity to get some balance. Right. So again, it's not discounting it, but it's saying this is occupying so much of the pie graph of me. I've got to balance it and I've got to turn my attention to something else right now. What's left? What else is in the room? Turn the rest of the lights on in the room. Thoughts, executive self. And I might go a little quicker down some of these slides just to make sure that we get everything in. So buckle up, friends. We're going to move a little quicker. But when I think about thoughts too, sometimes I speak a lot, I think a lot in pictures. I don't know if you can sense that, but I think sometimes our emotions and the different wayward thinking voices that we have, if you think of them all as different members of your board of directors that are there for the sole purpose of keeping you safe and survival, right? You've got a board of directors and doggone it, worry is very monopolizing at the board meetings sometimes, telling you everything that's not going to go wrong and all the things. Think of the movie Inside Out, right? You've got all these different characters at the board meeting, but your executive, so you are the chairman of the board. So if you are feeling tossed and turned and taken for a ride by all of these thoughts and all of these feelings, how do you regain a sense of like, thank you, worry. You are make some very solid points. I appreciate your time. We have noted all of the questions that are within those kind of uncertainties. You may be seated. So how do you sometimes put some boundaries on those feelings and take some authority back? Remind yourself, to set those intentions and get back to kind of what you're there for. And I have this also kind of about your career too. When all of this is like, why am I here? All of these feelings and thoughts might actually be working for you, not against you. How do you remind yourself what led you to this career in the first place? Where do you matter in the room? How do you get really clear on who you are in this space? Feelings. So we talked about kind of your body, how you center thoughts. How do we challenge those thoughts? Kind of what if to what then, or all those different things. How do you get back in the driver's seat? You would be the executive member of the board. Some of those thoughts may be kind of distorted and getting in your way. Feelings are often related to those thoughts. So my guess is if you begin to connect to the thought, then your feelings are going to change. But sometimes we need to address those feelings and they are very valid and they need our attention and they need just time. And so I think of feelings in a circle. Allow that feeling some space, comfort, and soothe yourself. We said that and go back to that balance of sometimes comforting means self-compassion. Sometimes it means discipline. Sometimes it means reaching out. Sometimes it means self-soothing. Sometimes sadness is an incredibly vulnerable feeling. Where do you feel safe to feel sad? But then if we get to the bottom, I wouldn't be a very good therapist if I just, kind of let people set up camp and live there in their really depth in the darkness, right? So, what's the very next step? Where do you have control? What can you do right now to help you? What do I need? What is the very next thing? Everything that feels overwhelming or big starts with one thing. And that might be like, I'm going to get up. I'm going to take a deep breath and look at myself in the mirror. I'm going to go get the mail. And then I'm going to decide after that what I'm going to do next. I'm going to get a good drink of water. I'm going to call my person and I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to maybe ask them questions about them, see where they are. I'm going to get out of the spotlight and I'm going to begin to start moving forward. So, how do you allow space for feelings? Because they matter and they need your attention. And then take the one next step forward. It's a circle. Find that circle. Where are you in this circle with your feelings? This is an idea. I'll let you just take a moment to look at this. When I said before, what's working, what's not working, think about being at work. Sometimes when we walk in and everything feels big, I just need to sit a minute and I need to get organized. I need to prioritize my day. That helps me feel more in control. I need to take a break. I need to refill my water bottle. I haven't eaten lunch today. I need to get outside, walk around the block, or maybe just walk to the bathroom and back. Connect with somebody in another office or connect with somebody else. You know, those things I find help me get through the day, or those things are meaningful. These things are not helping me. Fortune telling, getting in my head, making comparisons between me and other people, jumping to conclusions or making assumptions. I need to watch that. I'm doing that. I need to begin to notice it and see it and catch it. Raising my voice and losing my temper. Okay, how do I see it and catch my distress and then calm myself? Because whenever I yell and raise my voice and get irritable, I end up regretting it and I feel like crap afterwards, right? So I really want to be able to notice that, and that's not helping me, right? So begin to notice for yourself. These are some ideas, but I'm betting that each of you could kind of begin to fill in this chart for yourselves. This is what really works for me. This is what is harder. Communicating. Consider the people in your network. Who's the best audience for you today, right? Where do you need to go with certain things? And that might be people that you need to rehearse big conversations with before you go to your supervisor to have a conversation about something, or before you have a work meeting. Who do you trust? Who is your support network? Who's the audience that you need? Some people might be, able to help you get into something else and get focused on something else. Create and rehearse simple responses for casual interactions, right? People will ask you, how are you doing? What are you going to say? What are you going to quickly say that just responds to that and keeps it moving? To that end, sometimes you want to talk about cancer, sometimes you don't. Have conversation changers ready to go. So you can redirect the conversation, you can shift it. Conversation changers like, I'm doing really well. Things have been pretty stable for me recently. Tell me about the vacation that you're planning for your spring break. Just flip the switch. Begin to pay attention to the topics that feel sensitive to you. So if they come up in a group or they come up, you can quietly and discreetly take care of yourself, exit gently, or be a short and sweet response. And then that's a time for a conversation changer. So we're beginning to become aware of those things. Create boundaries. Boundaries, boy, we could have had an entire group on boundaries and what boundaries mean. But boundaries at the end of the day are just a line of this is okay and this is not okay. This is working, this works, this isn't working, right? And when we have clear boundaries and when we are able to stay within them, we're more confident, we're calmer, we're more emotionally stable. When we're being pushed to go outside of our boundaries, that's uncomfortable and it makes us feel a little less control. So clear boundaries define what's your responsibility, what's somebody else's responsibility. And that may include boundaries are not just about tasks and responsibilities or communication or relationships. Boundaries are also about emotional energy. And I talk a lot about that in workplaces where you might be, where I just the session before this was talking about somebody who has a boss that is incredibly insensitive and very demanding and has absolutely no acknowledgement of her treatment. And she has to really watch how that energy affects her, right? To recognize there's realities here that he does not have capacity, and then how she decides to let that affect her emotionally, right? So you got to also think about that too. Um, what's the best way for you to communicate with other people, right? That can be a boundary so that people aren't constantly like coming at you. And just watch. One of the things to notice is if fear is pushing your effort to maintain boundaries. I feel like I have to do this thing in order for them to see me as capable. I feel like if I don't do this, that I'm going to get fired or people are never going to turn to me again. That's fear leading to your boundaries. And my gosh, I don't just work with cancer patients in my office. I also work with teenagers and all kinds of people. And I won't want anybody to ever do something that feels uncomfortable for them for the approval or the striving of somebody else. So watch that. Is fear pushing at your boundaries, right? reality check. This is a quick one, and this might be an excellent way for us to end and wrap up today. Um, but it's often sometimes the first thing I do in my office is say, let's just do a reality check. Let's put everything you're dealing with in the center of the room. Look at this. You got work, you've got a family, you've got groceries and laundry, you've got, taxes coming up because it's February and they're coming up down the road here. We've got a cancer diagnosis, you've got treatment schedules and new treatment planning that you're figuring out. You've got your marriage, you've got your holy smokes, you've got elderly parents, maybe you're a dual caregiver, you're a caregiver and a survivor, maybe you're many of these things. No wonder you're feeling the way you're feeling. Like if we put it all on the table, what you're feeling makes a heck of a lot of sense. So don't judge it, don't criticize it. But then how I love these two words together, compassion, authority. Well, since we've now noticed what road you're driving on, you've got to take authority. You've got to take some responsibility for caring for yourself, or else we're going to have a train wreck. We're going to fall apart, right? So when we do this reality check, it sometimes helps us to take some responsibility for caring for ourselves. And that might be the way we end. I'm just going to see if there's anything here. Final note, basics. This is simple and easy. We can talk about all these different strategies, thinking, feeling your body for sure, navigating jerky conversations at work, all these different things. But just as well as I do that when we're unrested, that when we're not rested, that when we're hungry, that when we're not acknowledged and valued, and that we're disconnected, everything feels harder. So think those things are places where you often have control at a time when it feels like you don't have control. Some of these things might be places where you do. Scott. I know I ran us right up until the final end, but
No, no, we're good. That was wonderful. Like always, I'm over here taking notes for myself because we all need reminders and, coping mechanisms. And no matter what you've done or how many times I've seen you speak by now, there's always something to get out of this. So thank you for that. We're going to go into Q&A real quickly, but before we do, I just want to tell you about some upcoming events we have. Our next webinar is going to be actually a month exactly from today on March 5th, which is going to be building confidence at work. We are going to be joined by Sage Bolte, who's a wonderful social worker that, again, has been with CAC for years and years, like Julie has with us. On April 2nd, we have Marketing Yourself, Job Search and Beyond, which is the start of a whole job search suite. So if you are looking for a job or know anybody looking for a job, we're going to have about 3 or 4 months there going through different topics there. In May, we have job search tools using AI strategically, which is a brand new topic for us this year, which will be really interesting as well. And then we have our Midwest conference coming up on March 28th. That is an all-day conference. The Midwest part of it is really just about the time zone that we're going to be holding it in. It's going to be on Zoom, and all are welcome to join no matter where in the country or the world that you are. And then we also have our national conference coming up in June and our West Coast conference coming up in October as well. So we hope you'll be able to join us for some of these. If you have any questions after today, here's my email. Feel free to reach out and we'll get you an answer to anything that we don't get to today. We also hope you'll follow us on social and sign up for our newsletter to keep up to date on everything that we have going on here at CAC. And then I'm going to just leave this slide up as we go into Q&A, which has all the requirements for CEs. Again, there's going to be an evaluation that should pop up in your browser when you close out of Zoom this evening. Otherwise, we will send you an email tomorrow afternoon with all the information and the links to all of that. So, Julie, a few questions are coming in. The first one I have here is sleep disturbance has been one of my stress concerns. Constantly thinking about tomorrow's activities. Any advice on coping with that?
yeah, so
And you kind of mentioned this earlier with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which I think is a great idea.
yeah, your mind is busy. You've got a busy brain, busy mind. That you're not alone. Many people have a busy brain. I call it head heavy, right? So couple concrete things. One, I often tell people the strategy of commuting to bed. Right? So what I mean by that is if you need to be at a location for a meeting or a doctor's appointment at 3 o'clock, you don't leave at 2:55. You leave at 2:30. You leave it however long it's going to take you to get there. You commute there, right? But yet we all are like, all right, it's bedtime, brush teeth, lay down, plump, flunk, bed, right? And that's not going to work. Think about what it means to put a baby to bed. We don't just say, okay, night, night, and put a baby to bed. We do all sorts of rituals and conditioning to quiet and calm. So, first things first, I would recommend or I would encourage you to think about your commuting to bed, what it looks like to put yourself to sleep. Start 30 minutes before you want to lay down. Take your time, change the lighting in your room. Maybe you go so far as to put on some quiet music, turn off your screen, climb into your cozy bed and look at a book or a magazine, whatever. Maybe you stretch a little bit, just be a bit indulgent, put yourself to bed. Maybe part of that routine is I am going to write down kind of what I've been thinking about and I'm going to discharge it onto a piece of paper because I'm going to give it to my morning self. These things are so important that they're sitting here and there I'm thinking about them. I don't want to discount them, but I'm going to write them down here for my morning self. So tomorrow, when I'm rested and I'm ready, I'm going to give them my attention.
I love that. I'm someone who is constantly lying in bed going, okay, tomorrow I have to wake up and then I'm going to go to work and then I have that meeting and I have to do that project and then I have to finish this thing. And like I'm someone whose brain will not turn off. So I love that idea of just kind of like, okay, we can look at this list in the morning of the things that I'm thinking about and worrying about. And for now, let it go.
And then that
Uh
might be the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, quiet and get back to your body.
yeah. I will a lot of times put on like a meditation podcast or something like that too. I'm very something that helps me is like the recognizing it and letting it drift away in a boat down the river. So
Love
like
that,
not
Scott.
trying to ignore it, not trying to say that that stress is not going to be something in my day tomorrow, but being like, there's nothing I can do right now. I'm going to bed. I see that. I'm gonna put it in the boat and send it down the river.
And I love your idea too of the sleep stories or a sleep meditation. There are amazing apps, Calm, Headspace. There are a ton of wonderful apps that have those things. And then there's even more like the comfy, soft headphones that you can sleep in, right? So if you're really struggling with sleep, let's call in the big dog. Use those things. They're available to you for sure.
I even have podcasts I subscribe to that are boring on purpose.
I love it.
Like it's kind of
Yeah.
stimulating enough that you're like, oh, this is sort of interesting. I'm learning about quantum physics or whatever they're talking about. And then
Yeah.
it gets to a level you're just kind of like, and I'm out.
You might discover that for yourself, right? Like you might discover that when I begin to think about meal planning, I fall asleep.
Yes.
You might also begin, each of you begin to figure out that I'm going to turn my attention to planning out my meals through the next week. And then before you know it's morning, right? Like you might find that those things are too.
Yes. Uh, I think unfortunately this is going to be the last question we have. If we don't get to your question today, I'm so sorry. Feel free to shoot us an email at cancerandcareers@cew.org. Even if you think of something next week, we're always available for that one-on-one support for you. But the last question I have for you, Julie, here is what are your suggestions for someone who is alone, for example, not partnered while going through cancer? It's
Mm.
hard for me to ask for help and emotional support, which I'm finding I need when you don't have somebody else around on a daily basis, especially for those of us who are working from home. Any suggestions?
Oh man, being alone is tricky, right? Because a cancer diagnosis in and of itself can make you feel alone, right? That even the people that are friends or family or whatever that are long distance or different places don't completely understand. I would very strongly recommend that you find a group. I really, really would. And I think that people can be resistant to that. It feels very mental healthy, or it feels like something that nobody's had experience with. But I've been a part of groups since I've started my career, and I will tell you there is a power and a magic that can happen in a group of just feeling seen and feeling heard and feeling understood, whether you speak or don't speak. And so that would be my number one thing is can you find a cancer related group that works for you? And it's a little bit like going to a dinner party, right? Like you got to find your right group. You might go to one and be like, I don't like that one, but I really love this one. So there's a lot of fantastic organizations that have virtual support groups and all kinds of things. I would say that. And then secondly, I would, begin to challenge that question of you're being alone, right? And who might be just waiting to hear from you as a friend and wants to step in and support you. And maybe that's hard to ask for support because we don't want to be needy and we don't want to burden other people. But a lot of times, friends really are seeking an opportunity to be a friend. And they have no idea how. They don't know how to do it. They don't know what's right or wrong. People are awkward about it. So, really, can you be somebody that says, I do need you to come over and just let's watch a TV show together, or let's go for a walk, or I'd be really interested in checking out this new store that just opened, or going to get a coffee. So I would challenge that feeling within you that is telling you that you're by yourself too, because maybe there's somebody out there that really is waiting to hear how to be there for you.
And I'm sure anyone on this call who's received a diagnosis have had friends who the first thing they say is, let me know if there's anything I can do for you. I
Yeah.
know I've been there, we always try to tell people to be specific and not as vague as that because it will help, if you're just like, I'm gonna come to your house and buy you dinner and we're gonna eat, like that's a little more proactive than just a blanket statement for
Yep.
help. But don't be afraid to take people up on that offer either. Like they really do want to help. They want to hear how you're doing. I'm someone who will not necessarily pry and ask questions because I don't know how much you want to talk about it or what you don't want to talk about. But like, I'm always here for a friend if they give me a call or they text me and say, "Hey, are you around?" Last week I had a friend who has been in treatment and she called me and she was going back to work the next day and she was like, "Can you come help me bring stuff from my car back into my apartment?" And I went over and I ended up staying there for like 3 hours with her, talking and chatting and it was a little catching up. I hadn't seen her in a few months. It was a little help trying to talk her through some anxiety of the next day of what to expect from going back to work after 2 or 3 months off for treatment. But like I was someone who I gave her that blanket offer, and when she asked me for it, I was thrilled to jump in and answer that literal call.
Yep.
So and it can, like you said, it can be hard to ask for help and it can be uh you might not feel like somebody wants to hear about how you're feeling or what you're having a bad day or something like that, but I can guarantee there's someone who really does want to hear you, and even if it's just you monologuing and them sitting there and listening, I'm sure there's somebody who'd be happy to
You might
do
have an
that.
intuitive wisdom about who that is. Know who's just going to have you give you a blanket cliched response, and the person that just seems to be able to listen and is interested and willing to kind of, distract you in ways that are actually helpful and not dismissive. So really, I would say think about when I'm on that side, who's your audience? What's the audience you need? What are you needing in this moment? Who can deliver that?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. Well,
Mhm.
Julie, thank you so much again. This is always wonderful to see you and hear all of your wisdom and guidance. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. We hope
Yeah.
we'll see you next month or another time in the year. But have a great night, everybody.
Thank you all. Thanks for having me.
Take care.